All right, y'all. I hope you remember we got ourselves a test tomorrow and on Friday. Um, and today you guys are taking the PSAT. I hope that goes well for you. You should bring questions once you get done with the PSAT. Just bring them over to the classroom. We can talk about similar problems. So I'm going to run through these pretty quickly because I just want to make the file as small as I can so it uploads and gets done on time. So here we go. First problem, we had to solve an equation. One of the things we talked about is simplify each side first. So in this case, we've got some like terms right here. And here, these are both x terms. So let's go ahead and simplify that. 24 take away 14, so that's 10x plus 3 equals 16. After both sides are simplified as far as we can go, we undo additions, trying to get that x alone, or subtractions. In this case, we're going to subtract because 3 minus 3 is 0. 16 minus 3 is 13, and then we finally undo multiplications and divisions. So it looks like I'm getting 13 over 10, which is the same as 1.3. But 13 over 10 is just perfectly fine. Number 2, always identify what type of problem you're trying to solve. Inequality, okay? And you can see that right there. We solve inequalities just like equations, with only a couple of exceptions. So I'm going to rewrite it so I got some room here. If I can get off my highlighter. There we go. So again, just like equations, we undo any additions or subtractions first. In this case, we add 6 to zero it out on the left-hand side, and 12 plus 6 is 18. And then here's the one catch, and I talked about it yesterday in class, but if you weren't there, you missed it. If I have to divide by a negative, and I want to divide by a negative because negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1, so that's 1x. But because I divided by a negative, I have got to take this inequality and I have to flip it around. It's got to point the other direction. And then 18 divided by negative 3 is negative 6. If you do not flip your inequality when you divide by a negative number or multiply by a negative number, you will get the wrong answer. Now we do want to graph these. So I'm going to draw a nice just number line here. I'll label the key points. We've got negative 6, we got negative 7, negative 5. And so 6, and then as long as you have this x on the left-hand side, the direction your inequality points, in this case it points to the left, is the direction all the solutions are. So those solutions are all the x values that are less than negative 6, like negative 7, negative 8, even these fractions in between. And we're done. So our answer would be like this. X is less than negative 6, and here it is graphically. All right, again, identify your problem. Compound inequality means there's two inequalities involved. So let's take a look at it. There's one of them, and there's the other one. Notice this one has these this 2x minus 6 sandwiched in between the two inequalities. So that's really telling us two statements. The first statement it tells us is 12 is less than the 2x minus 6. This is an and statement, or statements will say or. And then it also tells us this statement, that 2x minus 6 is less than 24. Now we just solve it like we solved the inequality just above this problem. Let's just go ahead and undo this addition. I'm undoing it from the right-hand side, or undo the subtraction, because I got the x on the right, so I'm going to leave it there. Negative 6 and 6 is 0, so I've got 18. And then undo our multiplication with division. I'm dividing by a positive, so I do not flip the inequality. So the first solutions are x's that are bigger than 9, okay? X is greater than 9. Let's do the other inequality. This time I'll add 6. Get that x alone. 2x is less than 30. Looks like x is less than, divide by 2, 15. And that's a perfectly fine answer, except it's kind of hard to understand it until you take a look at it on a number line. X is greater than 9. So here's 9. And this is greater than 9. Numbers like 10 and 11 and 12. And I'm only going to go up to 15 here because I can't take everybody that's greater than 9, because I also have to deal with numbers that are less than 15. And that's numbers that are in this direction: 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. So it's only in this little region right here on the number line where numbers are both greater than 9 and less than 15 at the same time. Here's how we write this solution. We say x has to be less than 15, greater than 9. And so that has trapped our x value in between 15 and 9. These inequalities will always point the same direction. They'll also always point left, as long as you put the small number on the left-hand side and the big number on the right-hand side. I encourage you to do that. We always want to have patterns that we can follow. You got to solve an absolute value equation. Absolute value equation signified by an absolute value that has an x inside of it. Okay, absolute value equations, the key thing is you have to write two things. I do not know if the material, the 2x minus 2 in here, is a 10, because absolute value of 10 is 10, or if it's a negative 10. The absolute value of negative 10 is also 10, so I have to cover both possibilities. So I write it without the absolute values. I just put or, and then I write it again, but this time I say it could be equal to negative 10. And we just solve these two equations. We'll add 2. 2x equals 12. Let's divide by 2 now. Undo that multiplication. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So there's one possibility. Next possibility, I add 2. This time on the right-hand side, I get negative 8 and divide by 2, so negative 4. So x is either 6 or negative 4. I don't have context for this problem, so I don't know which one is the absolute correct one. So we just give them both and say, hey, it's either this or this. In some situations, it could be both. These are very checkable. If I take 2 times 6, 12. 12 minus 2 is 10. Absolute value of 10 is 10. It checks. If I plugged in negative 4, 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Minus 2 is negative 10. Absolute value is still 10. So they both check. And we are done. Let's take a look at our next one. Solve the absolute value inequality. Absolute value, again, we can see the x inside the absolute value. Inequality because of that less than. So let's go ahead and solve him. Just like with the equal sign, we have to draw it, write it twice. So here's our first one. 3x plus 6 could be less than 20. This is an and statement. Talked about this the other day too. Absolute value inequalities, think of it as less than. And it will help you remember these less thans are ands. Had this been a greater than symbol, then it is a greater, like that, be an or statement. So we've written it once. We write it again, but we have to play a little game on it. Less than turns into greater than, so we flip the inequality and we change the sign on the 20. And all we're trying to do is, if you think about this on the number line, distance and absolute value are very much related. If I want to be less than 20 units away from 0, I have to be less than 20 going towards a 0, or greater than negative 20 going towards a 0. So I'm trying to pin down this distance. So rewrite it the second time. You flip that inequality and you change it to a negative. So let's solve these two, because the rest is just like the previous problem. Subtract our 6. 3x is less than 14, so x is less than 14 over 3. Not a very pretty answer, but we're going to write that as, what, negative 4 2/3. Subtract our 6. 3x is greater than negative 26, divide by 3, x is greater than negative 26 thirds, also not very pretty, but we'll rewrite that as negative 8 and 2 thirds. Now I've written those as mixed fractions, and the reason we write them as mixed is because they're easier to graph that way. So negative 8 and negative 9, and so negative 8 and 2 thirds is about right there. We just have to ballpark it. I got to be greater than it. So this arrow points to the right, so I'm going greater than negative 8 and 2 thirds. The other one, 4 and 2 thirds, so that's between 4 and 5. So let's just come up here and mark 4 and 5. And so 4 and 2 thirds would be right about there. They're going to be less than it, so it points to the left. And so they overlap at all those points in between those two numbers, negative 8 and 2 thirds and 4 and 2 thirds. And we just write our solution like this, again pointing to the left, 4 and 2 thirds and negative 8 and 2 thirds. Then we know all the numbers that work. So if you ask me, hey, is 0 a solution? Absolutely, because 0 is in the middle of here. And so 0, I can guarantee, would make this inequality true. 3 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 6 is 6. Absolute value of 6 is 6, and 6 is certainly less than 20. And so any numbers in here would actually make that true. There's an entire range of them. Next one. So get that zoomed right. Find the slope of a line. Excellent. Slopes. Should know this formula. Change in y over change in x. Just label your first points x1 to y1, your second points x2, y2. 15 minus 12, just substitution. And x2 is 6, and minus negative 8, because x1 is negative 8. So that looks like 15 minus 12 is 7. That double negative there, minus on minus becomes a plus. So it's 6 plus 8, 14. I think I'm getting a half. Yeah, I knew something didn't sit right. Doing this early in the morning. 15 minus 12 is not 7. 15 minus 12 is 3. And we can't reduce it now, so we are going to stop at, hopefully, there we go, 3/14. That's better. Next problems. Write the equation of a line. When you see write the equation of the line, you generally want to think this formula, the point slope formula. Okay, here's our point we're going through, x1, y1. And here's our slope we're using, because it has to have that slope. So we just start substituting. Y minus my y1 value, be careful, because it's the second point, the y value, equals m, which we now know is a half, x minus my x value. Be careful, the x value is that first one, and it's negative, so that's minus a negative 3. So we just have to now do cleanup work. Double negative, so it's x plus 3. We have to do a little distributing here. Y minus 4 equals a half of an x, and half of 3 is, I'm going to write it as 1.5. Calculator can do that for you. Just take 0.5 or a half times 3. It'll tell you it's 1.5. Let's slide him over if we can. It's not going to let me just grab him. Maybe I can with that. Nope. So I'm going to rewrite that. Y minus 4 equals a half x plus 1.5. My last step to get that y alone, getting it into slope-intercept form. Y equals a half x plus, that'd be 5.5. There we go. Let's see. Next one, write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form. So we're writing the equation of a line again. So I would think right away, grab this guy, that point slope formula. They gave me an x1, y1. That's my x1, y1. That's my 2, 8. Careful now, I have to be perpendicular to this line. This line has a slope of 4. Remember, we talked about this. Perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. So this is like a 4 over 1. So the reciprocal is 1 over 4, and then the negative would be negative 1 over 4. And now we just substitute like we did in the previous problem. Y minus y1, that's my 8, equals m, but my m is this perpendicular slope, 1/4, x minus my x1, which is 2. And the rest is just cleanup work. So let's go ahead and distribute that. We'll have y minus 8 equals negative 1/4 x, and 1/4 of a 2 sounds like it's going to be a half. Oops, it's going to be a plus half. Positive, negative times negative. We'll take the 8 to the other side by adding it to the left. Line it up with its like term right there. Y equals negative 1/4 x plus 8.5, or 8.5. And we are done. And then our last one on the first review guide. Find the f of negative 7. See how this is, and I just want to reiterate this. Name of the function, so it's called the function f, and here it is. That is function f, 2x minus 5. This is the variable, or the number that is inside function f, the variable in this case. So it's function f, and it has an x in it. If they want the f of negative 7, I just simply replace the x with a negative 7. Now we only work on the right side. 2 times negative 14, or 2 times negative 7 is negative 14 minus 5, negative 19. So we can say the f of negative 7 is negative 19. Only work on this right-hand side. Never touch that left-hand side. Once you've written what you're asking for, you just do that work. And that's it for Review Guide 1.